Hi guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm going to go over the kind of the front end of the AT-1 MX today. What I'm doing there. I've decided to go a little bit different route just because I had some other parts, and they will work better, I believe, but there's some work that has to be done to them in order to get them to work. So let's take a look at it here. These are the standard AT2 front forks, and these are the DT2 or RT2, either one, the 250 or 360 forks. Couple things to note on these is that the triple trees are exactly the same. They take the same bearings, they're the same size everywhere except where the tubes go in. These are 30 millimeters, these are 34. So you get a lot more strength, and all you've got to do is have the triple trees for the 250 or 360, and you can do this along with your forks. And you get a little over an inch more travel from these forks than you do these. And in order to make this work, you can do it a couple different ways. You can use the hub that comes on the 250 or 360 Enduro. Now these are all 72 items, so 72 forks, and everything's 72. And I think maybe 3 is the same. I'm not real sure on that. But anyhow, this hub weighs over 5 pounds. And if you use the small fork or the AT1 or CT1 hub, it weighs a little over 3 pounds. All you've got to do is make it fit the fork tubes. And that's what I've done here. I had to, you can't use the DT1 or RT1 axle. This is for these forks. You've got to use the one from the smaller bike. And I guess you probably could, but it's more work to do it that way than it is to do it the way I'm doing it. The first thing that you've got to do is right here. This hole is, of course, going to be too big. So you've got to have an adapter. So I spun one out, and that's my adapter for this side. Now you're not going to be able to use this spacer from the other side because it's too big. So on the lathe I cut another one down, and it's smaller on the inside, same size on the outside. And that goes in there, and that will, when you clamp this down, it holds that in the right position. And to finish it up, I had to turn a small washer that was 45 thousandths that's going to go here. And let me show you why. I also had to trim down 50 thousandths on the outside here and 50 thousandths on the inside. And I believe it took 70 off right here. So everything will fit in there. Oops, let me get a block under that. Okay, so we've got our adapter in this side, and we just slide this up. We've got this washer that's going to go right here. Get all that started. with all that on there, you get your washers and nut on there. And there's your lighter brake hub. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a 21-inch front wheel on here. And with the swing arm modifications we did, we'll be putting 13 or 13.5-inch shocks on the back instead of the 12s. I'm not real sure what I'm going to do yet, but that's my plan. And all this had to be done in order to center this wheel in the forks. So everything's centered now, and everything, like I said, this all bolts right on the frame. You don't have to do anything. You just bolt it on. And you're saving the amount of weight that these are extra. You actually save 2 pounds by not using this hub. So if you were to use this hub and these forks, this fork set and this hub are 2 pounds lighter than this is. So there's some savings there, and it's kind of hard to believe, but when you start shaving some weight, it's a big deal. Plus we're gonna get almost 7 inches of travel on the front here, versus the little less than 6 on the other forks. So anyhow, let's get on with making this stuff. I'll show you what I go through to get this done, and then if you want to, you can do the same thing to yours. And these forks are pretty plentiful out there. You got to really watch to get some nice ones. I've had these for quite some time. I bought these for the flat tracker, and I've got another set that are not as good as these. Of course, these have all been polished up and new seals and whatnot put in them, and the other set that I've got haven't. So they're going to need all the same work, and I don't know if they're bent or anything. I'm going to have to do some inspection on them, but they're not quite as nice as these, but they still don't have any rust on them. So there's our front end for the MX. Before we get started on that, let me just explain why I had to go the route I did. These are the bearings that are in the 250-360 hub, and these are the bearings that are in the smaller hub for the AT-1 CT1. You can see on the smaller bikes, it's larger on the outside diameter, smaller on the ID, and then on the 250-360, it's smaller out here and bigger in the middle. And there's, you could probably bush these, the 250-360 bearings. You could put a bushing in here on the smaller hub and use them, but it would be a very thin bushing, and it would be a lot more trouble than what I had to go through making the spacers and whatnot that I did. And there's just no axle, or no, I'm sorry, there's no bearing that has this on the inside and this on the outside. These are, let me get to the millimeter there. These are 35 on the outside diameter, and these are 37. So there's not a lot of difference, but there's enough. And then of course the axle for this one is 12 millimeter, and this one is 15. Yeah, 15. The width is about a millimeter difference. This one's 11, and this one's 12. But that's not a big deal. You know, you could get by with that. So that's the reason I went the way I did, because there's just, you can't find, or I couldn't find, a bearing. These are what they call a 6301 for the small bike and a 6202. Is that right? Yeah, 6202 for the big bike, and both sides are the same. But I could not find a bearing that has the 37 millimeter on the outside and the 15 millimeter on the inside. So that is why I went the way I did. I don't think there's going to be any real problem using the smaller axle, as long as you make your spacers and everything that you need to do for the larger set of forks. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know why I did what I did. Okay, I've got to take the 1/16 of an inch out of the slot here, make it a little deeper to center the hub into the forks. So that's what we're doing right now. All right, we're going to cut the slot in the spacer there now. I think this will be the last cut. Yep, looks like we're through. Okay guys, got it all put together here, and I'll show you how I check the center here. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be pretty close. And you see the, I don't know whether you are or not. Let's see. Yeah, you see how I'm up against the fork tube here, and how that fits right into the notch here. And the same on this side, up against the fork tube, and fits in the notch here on the caliper. So that should be pretty close to being centered. You know, with the knobby tires on there and everything, you're not going to notice a little bit, but you would if it was, you know, a quarter of an inch maybe, I don't know. And of course you'd be running pretty close to the edge of the tubes too. So just to kind of recap, everything here will bolt right on the smaller bike from the bigger bike. The only difference is the size of holes that are here for the tubes. And you know, it's just these are 34. You're getting a lot more. You get a lot more strength out of it. Another little over an inch of travel. And I think a while ago when I talked about the weight savings, it may have been a little confusing, but if you use these forks and this hub, these forks and this hub are going to save you a couple pounds. So that's what I meant. And actually, it's real close. I think the weight of these forks is 21 pounds, and the others, the smaller ones, are 19. So really, it's just about a wash as long as you do not use this hub. So you're right at about the same weight by using the small hub on here. It's probably weighs maybe a pound greater, but not bad. You see that just with a little effort we can get a better suspension, longer travel, and more strength out of the bigger forks, and they fit right on. The only thing, you know, you really don't have to do anything if you use the 360, 250 360 hub. It's pretty much a bolt-on thing. But if you want to use the smaller hub, save you some weight, you do have to go through a little bit of trouble trimming down the brake hub, or not the hub, but the plate, brake plate. And you've got to make 2 spacers and a washer. And what I'm going to do now is probably in the next few days I'm going to go ahead and zinc plate those new parts that I made, so they'll have some corrosion preventative on there. And I just think that with these it's going to increase the ground clearance quite a bit too, at least a couple inches. I'm almost thinking it might look like the Harley Baja of the day, you know, really high like it was, but it's a much better looking bike than the Harley Baja. Even though I kind of like that bike, I thought it was kind of cool, but it was kind of underpowered, and it was very tall, very short. Anyhow, back on this thing, it's going to be a lot taller when I get the longer shocks on the back to compensate for everything. Then everything should kind of match front and rear, especially with the extra length on the swing arm. And you can slide the fork tubes up about an inch if you need to before it hits the handlebars on this setup here. So you can shorten them up a little bit, and if for some reason they're just too terribly long, you can always cut them off and rethread where the caps go. That's kind of a pain in the butt, but the guys down at Franking by Forks or Forks by Frank or whatever it is, they can do that. And I asked him, and I think it's $80 for the pair to do that, to cut them off and rethread them. So that is an option if we have to, but I don't think we'll have to. I think a lot of people are actually running this type of setup on their Enduros, and it's working very well. So guys, I appreciate you coming along on the ride again, and we'll see you in the next video.